Welcome back, everybody. Today I want to talk about 3 tools to use to pick better stocks in less time. And one in particular has been a huge time saver for me, and it's one, believe it or not, we've actually already talked about on this channel. But what made me think about it was a tweet I saw a few weeks back that basically said 80% of, quote, deep dives on here are copying, pasting financials from Yahoo Finance and asking ChatGPT to write a summary on the business. I guess I just care way more about quality and detail. And then they continue on. If you're writing one, quote, deep dive per week, you're not writing a deep dive. And the first thing I thought when I read this was, wow, I completely disagree with this, at least for myself personally, and the ways that I like to invest. And now I'm not saying anything negative about this person individually because they actually do some really interesting research that I enjoy reading, and their portfolio seems to be performing well. But I just think that there's a lot of people out there who want to pick good stocks and not have it take up their whole life. And even for myself, I've done analysis on a lot of companies, but I'm also a husband, I'm a dad, and there's a bunch of other things I would much rather spend my time on, even if I do enjoy analyzing companies. And what I found is that there are more tools than ever to help us speed this process up. So if your goal is to simply make money for your family, maybe have a chance at beating the market, then these can really help get you there in less time and effort than in the past. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, number 1, the first tool is, yes, you guessed it, AI chatbots. Now, using AI chatbots like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, even Grok or Meta AI can greatly improve the depth and breadth of your analysis and do it in a very short amount of time. Now, I wrote about this in my newsletter way back in March because I'd already started using them, and I got a few comments from people who were saying that you shouldn't use them, they're wrong a bunch of times, it's not true analysis, I'm a purist, I do everything manually, I still use an abacus because calculators are evil, we get it, you just love pain and you want everyone to be miserable. But in my opinion, these are game-changing tools as long as you approach them with the right mindset. Because AI chatbots aren't just there to give you all the right answers, you use them in the way that you would use an assistant who's supporting you. And let me give you a quick example. Like if you had an idea about a stock or an industry that you wanted to know more about, what would you actually do? You'd look online, you'd Google search, you'd YouTube search, maybe read some earnings reports and try to gather information about it. Well, if you had a personal assistant or an investing analyst, you'd basically say, hey, go find whatever information you can about this stock or topic, and here's the information that I want you to get from me. Now, when they came back, would you just assume that everything they give you is 100% correct, or is there a possibility that there's some human error, maybe some misunderstanding of context in there? Well, the answer is of course, and the same is true for AI chatbots. But overall, the positives far outweigh the negatives. I use it to get a general overview of a company when I first start looking into it. Who are they? Who are their customers? What's their total addressable market? What makes them different from their competition? And these are all things that I can look up. And of course, once I get serious about a stock, then I'll dig in and verify things that I think are critical. But this turns my initial interest into something that's more knowledgeable and more actionable in about 20 seconds. So something that would initially take me hours to do now takes 20 seconds, and I can go even deeper on whatever parts interest me compared to other companies or industries, all with a simple question. So does it give me all the answers of what stocks to invest in? Well, no, of course not, but it gives me a general idea of what a business is all about in the span of minutes as opposed to hours. All right, so now that we have an idea of what kind of value we can get from these, let's talk about which ones are the best. Now, I've used all the major ones, and obviously there's going to be some personal preference here involved, but in my opinion, ChatGPT and Claude are the best for general business analysis when it comes to having a good amount of depth and detail in the answers. I've used Gemini as well for this in the past, and Grok and Meta AI not so much, but they are improving. And that's something that's true of all of these chatbots and the underlying models. They improve very quickly, and the things that they can do today compared to like a year ago are just pretty crazy. And they pretty much all can be used for free. ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, and Meta AI can all be used for free with some usage limits. Grok, which is from Twitter or X, is the only one where you have to be a paid user in order to use it. But I actually pay for ChatGPT and Claude because I use them so much, not just for stock analysis, but a whole bunch of other things in my life. Plus, I like new tech and I like tinkering, so, there's that. But let's go ahead and break down what they're good for and maybe what they're not so good for. Now, in terms of what they're good for, getting a better understanding of a business and its competitors. Plus, comparing different businesses against each other to understand how they're similar or how they're different. Doing initial discovery of stocks or trends, understanding risk and overall sentiment, getting context about a stock's core business, and getting ideas for portfolio construction. So obviously it's not your financial advisor, but it's able to kind of pull from generally understood best practices with the context that you provided and give you some ideas. Now, in terms of what it's not so great for, I think number one is analyzing financial statements, because sometimes the data that it uses can be out of date or maybe taken from sources that aren't the right ones or their official earnings reports. Number two, blindly having it do all your research for you. Like, there can and will be errors and mistakes in what it provides you, so make sure that you verify anything that's critical if you're planning to invest your money. And then lastly, giving you specific stock picks. Now, it will give you some if you ask, but remember, it's there to assist you. It's not your financial advisor. It should be the first step of your research, not your whole research process. But the bottom line is that ChatGPT and Claude have really sped up my research when it comes to analyzing stocks, specifically for companies that I'm unfamiliar with. In the span of minutes, I can get a general idea of who they are, what their business is about, who their competition is, and what makes them different. So it really gives me a head start on my analysis. And the beauty of it is most of them are pretty much free. So at a minimum, you can try it out, see if it actually helps your process or you have a little bit more interest in trying it, and there's really no risk to do so. Okay, so let's move on to the second tool. And this is one that we've talked about before on this channel, NotebookLM by Google. Now, NotebookLM has probably been the biggest time saver for me because of how it helps me deal with quarterly earnings and annual reports. I mean, it's honestly made that process so much less time consuming and way easier overall. Now, it's basically a notebook/research assistant, but it specializes in taking sources, whether they're documents or video or audio, and then being able to provide context around the sources and answer questions. So what I do is I literally have a notebook for each of the companies I hold in my portfolio or the ones that I'm researching, and I've uploaded their previous year or two of earnings reports, annual reports, earnings call transcripts, and basically any other information they have that NotebookLM can read. And what's awesome about it is that it stays there, so when the next quarter comes around, I just download the documents for that quarter, add it to my existing notebook, and I can ask questions basically for the whole history. And here's a couple examples of how I use it. You know that slide I show with the business segments of a company, most recent revenue quarter, and year-over-year growth? Well, I simply ask it to create a table based on the most recent quarter and what information I want to see. And because it also has the quarterly reports from a year ago, it's able to calculate the growth rate as well. And then I simply plug it into my slide so I have it to reference back to. Or how about my results versus guidance table, where basically I show how well the management team of a company has met or exceeded their own guidance over time. Now, when I first did this, I did this manually, going through every single earnings report every quarter for each company. But now I simply ask it to show the guidance and the corresponding results in a table for how many quarters I want. And as long as I have those earnings reports uploaded as sources, there's my information. And I mean, these are just two examples, but there are plenty more. Like, for example, I used it to summarize the DOJ's complaint against Visa, but after I'd already read through the whole document myself. If I'd used this beforehand, it would have saved me hours. So as you can see, anything that requires tedious scanning through information and documents is made infinitely easier with NotebookLM. Plus, each response that it provides adds the sources from where it got the information from, so you can always go back and check it if it seems a little bit off or to get additional context in the actual document itself, which is really nice. So for anyone who's picking individual stocks and wanting to actually use the company's annual reports, and earnings calls as a core piece of their analysis, it makes that easier than ever. And you guys have seen how much I do that in my videos over the past year or two, so this has reduced my time spent by a lot. And at least for now anyway, it's free as long as you have a Google account. So let's break down what it's good for and maybe what it's not so good for. Now, it's good for any tedious document reading and scanning, which we just talked about, but also getting insights in annual reports, earnings reports, and financial statements. So while AI chatbots aren't great for financial statement stuff, NotebookLM is, because you're literally providing it the source and it's able to analyze it quickly. But also things like risk or debt schedule or buybacks authorized that are usually found in annual reports. Now they can be found a lot quicker with just a simple prompt. Also, it's great at getting insights from actual earnings calls if you provide the transcripts, because NotebookLM does a good job of providing information across data sources and then presenting them together. So it can take information from the earnings report press release and then tie it back to the management commentary in the earnings call. And I mean, seriously, for me, this was huge because I was doing all this stuff manually, which was just really painful. And then lastly, being able to analyze information across different source types. So text, video, and audio. It just makes it very flexible depending on what you want to know. So in terms of what it's not so good for, number one, it's limited to the sources that you give it. So basically, anything that it provides is simply based on the information that you gave it. It's not going to go out and search and give you a new idea. It's simply reorganizing and presenting the information that's already there. Which leads into the second thing, in that it's not really all that easy and good for discovery. Now, you can definitely learn about new topics and companies, but again, it's based on you being able to provide the sources for NotebookLM to pull from. So you're limited in whatever you actually decided to give it as a source. And what I mean by that is, if you're looking for new ideas or you're trying to understand about something you don't really know about, well, you may not know where to get the good sources for it to really tell you anything. And then lastly, it's a cool Google thing, so you never really know if or when they're going to retire it without any notice, but that's an issue for another day. So in terms of how I would compare NotebookLM to the AI chatbots, is that they're both your assistants, but NotebookLM is a well-organized and structured doer, meaning you give it all the info and it knows how to query and present it back to you based on what questions you want answered. It allows you to understand very specific sources of information in a new and quicker way. Whereas AI chatbots are a little bit more free thinkers, where they'll go out and try to find an answer for you based on what you ask them to do. They can provide more general information, scan the web, and add additional context without you asking for it. So both are extremely powerful and useful, just for different reasons and use cases. And just a heads up, if using these AI tools sounds interesting to you and you want a cheat sheet of basic prompts that I use to get you started, then check down in the description of this video, because I have one that I can send you for free, and it has about 20 or so prompts in it. Now, full transparency, it is a newsletter. Sign up with your email, but this newsletter is going to be specific to sharing the things that I'm learning with these AI tools as I go, and basically anything to help pick stocks in less time. So check the link in the description if you want that, and get a bunch of free prompts to get you started. Okay, so lastly, the third tool we can use to pick better stocks in less time is simply stock research services. So again, this isn't going to be for everyone, right? You're going to always have people who say, oh, stock research and pick services are just scams. And we talked about this in my Alpha Picks review video last week. Depending on where you're at in your investing journey, how much capital you're investing each month, and how much time you think you're going to save, signing up for a stock research or pick service can actually be totally worth it. And I specifically broke that down in my video last week. If you account for your time saved and consider the cost like a research service cost, then as long as you believe in the method they're using and you're seeing results, then it can provide a ton of value for what you're paying. Now, obviously, there's different flavors of this type of service, where you have the Morningstars of the world where they provide analysis of each stock, but you kind of have to pick and choose what to look for. Or you can have actual stock picking services like Seeking Alpha's Alpha Picks, Motley Fool's Stock Advisor, or Zacks Research. And the idea there is that you pay them for access and they give you their picks, and in theory, the picks are good so you can make money. And now, I said this in my Alpha Picks review video, and I'll say it again here. Anytime that you pick individual stocks or you use a stock picking service, there's always risk that it's not going to work out. That's something that we all have to understand going into it. But when thinking about if it makes sense for you, what you have to decide is having the research done for you and your time saved worth the cost based on where you're at financially? Because it can definitely make sense if you simply don't want to spend the time doing research on stocks yourself. And at that point, it's a basic math exercise to decide how much you're technically paying per hour saved of your own time. And that's time you can spend with your family, or doing things you enjoy, or even making more income to invest more into your accounts. So my point is, if the goal is to leverage the analysis from other people to save you time and effort, then it can be totally worth it. You just have to find the one that's transparent in their performance and their method kind of lines up with your personal risk tolerance. Now, for me personally, I hadn't really used these stock picking services before, but reviewing Alpha Picks and seeing some of the comments actually got me interested in it as a way to save me even more time and to understand how to actually use those type of services well, because I got this comment on my Alpha Picks video saying that they're signed up, but they're still unsure how to decide which stocks to pick, especially the ones that have gone up a lot already. And that's a really important point to think about for these services. Like, okay, you have a list, but how are you actually going to implement it if you're not just recreating the whole thing? So I decided it's something I'm actually going to do with Alpha Picks specifically in 2025, and I'll be sharing my experience with you guys throughout the year. Now, it'll be in addition to my normal portfolio updates and all that, but I think it'll be a really interesting experiment to use one of these services and share with you all how I'm actually using it each month and the relative performance of it. Now, I'm still working through how exactly I'm going to do it and what it's going to look like, but I think it'll be really helpful for folks out there who are struggling with these services and really understanding how to use them best. So I'm going to try it with you and we'll learn together. The reality is, not not everyone wants to spend their time researching stocks all day. Some of us would much rather use the tools and services available to us to get our time back. And trust me when I say this, the older you get, the more attractive that looks. So these are 3 tools that can definitely help you achieve that and allow you to leverage the growing capabilities of AI-based tools to pick better stocks in less time. And as an added bonus, you get to brag to all your friends about how cool and futuristic you are. Now, if you want to see my forward video on the AlphaPick service and if it's actually worth the cost, you can watch that by clicking this video right here. Hope you guys have a great day out there. Financial independence is true freedom, so keep building and stacking wins, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.